Hey Gearheads, and welcome to Garage Talk, a discussion about all things automotive. I'm Corey.
And I'm Matt. And each week this podcast will serve as a catalyst for discussion on all sorts of topics that grind our gears, rev our engines, or just need a bit more conversation.
And on this week's episode, we've got a little something special. Continuing last week's off-road theme from the Texas Truck Rodeo. Matt, why don't you give us a little insight what we're talking about?
Well, our guest this week is a renowned automotive journalist, has raced the Dakar, driven in over 70 countries, is in the Off-Road Hall of Fame, and drives over 200 different vehicles every year without putting a single mile on her own personal vehicle because she doesn't own one.
She doesn't need one.
That's right. We have the pleasure of discussing all things automotive with off-road legend Sue Mead.
And I cannot wait to get in on this. So I alluded to earlier how I actually met her at the Texas Truck Rodeo event put on by the Texas Auto Writers Association. And she was one of the first people that came up and introduced themselves to me. She saw the deer in headlights look on my face. It was my first rodeo. That joke will not get old.
Oh.
And yeah, she could see just, oh my gosh, I'm in over my head on this. And she and I started talking and told her, you know, who I was with. I was with the Garage Talk podcast and all that. And she's like, you know, if you ever need any help or need a guest on your podcast, I'd be happy to come on. I said, I'm going to take you up on that.
Absolutely.
Not only that, she also volunteered to all the drivers there that she would be more than happy to ride off-road with us or even drive and give us tips and tricks from her immense knowledge and 30-plus years of history. And sure enough, the first off-road rig I got in was a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon with the EcoDiesel.
Yes.
And as soon as I put it in drive and started engine forward, I saw Sue Mead standing right there. I rolled down the window. I said, Sue, hey, Sue. Hey, why don't you come over? Come and help me out. I'm not going to lie. I hadn't even been back to see what the course looked like at that point.
Yeah.
So I did not know what I was in for, but I know that it was professionally put together by Off-Camber Designs and that it was going to put trucks through the paces. So I've done some mild stuff. I've gotten my own vehicle stuck a few times, but I knew that this was designed for really stretching the legs on some of these vehicles, and we had some amazing vehicles there, including the fabled Ram TRX. And knowing that those were there, I was just like, I'm not going the first round by myself. And so I said, Sue, why don't you come on over? So why don't we go ahead and welcome her on? Sue, we greatly appreciate you joining us. It's been a long time since I've seen you.
I think it's about a week.
Yeah, just about. Of course, by the time this hits the airwaves, it would have been more like 2-3 weeks. But very nice to catch up with you.
Thanks. I really enjoyed our time in Texas.
Yes.
Doing what I love the most in my automotive job.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we want to talk to you about. So you are a renowned off-road driver. You have contributed a lot to the automotive community, and we just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about all of that this evening. And first, we'll just kind of give you the floor to give a brief rundown of your history, maybe some notable vehicles, notable trips, things that stick out to you. And the floor is yours.
Well, it's still a shock to me. I was a news photographer for a local daily and some weekly publications. I did a little work for the Associated Press, and I had a near-death experience. It was quite serious. That while I was in the hospital, not knowing whether I was going to survive or not, sort of organs shutting down, I realized that I had two goals and two prayers. One was to see my daughter graduate from a high school, and I've seen her through a number of graduations now. And the other was to see the world before I died. So as a photographer, I thought I'll have to be a travel writer and photographer. Had no idea how I'd get there. And the serendipitous experience came about in my life where I met a young man who wanted to be a news photographer. I helped him and gave him rides to the newspaper for his senior year of high school. And after college, he moved to LA and couldn't get a job in news and was hired by a magazine that he described to me as called Four Wheeler. This was 1988, and the world was not what it is today.
Oh, wow.
With everyone saying four-wheel drive, four-wheeler, four-wheel this, four-wheel that. And as you know, it's more than 60 to 70% of the market is now four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So there I was in 1988, which always feels like '06. And I was trained on the first team that included women at Four Wheeler Magazine to evaluate SUVs and trucks. Awesome. And again, just to say that it was not what mainstream folks were driving.
Right.
I used to say it was the red plaid jacket boys. Some women, but not moms taking their kids to school typically. So that's where I started. And I decided, again, with a desire to see the world, I pushed myself. I was part-time for a couple of years, and then I pushed myself to use four-wheeling as a way to see the world. And I'll say right now that I've been to more than 70 countries because of my automotive job. And so that goal has been met. And I decided to take on extreme driving, both slow speed, and at that time it was an event called Camel Trophy with Land Rover vehicles.
Okay.
And my first trip with them was very much like, it actually spawned the TV show Survivor. My first go at becoming part of the team was 30 hours of non-stop athletics, driving, navigating, GPS, and that my first event took me to Central America for nearly a month, my second to Borneo, my third to Mongolia. I've got my Mongolia hat behind me on this chair. And I was off and running, and I probably visited 40 countries with Land Rover alone, some of them on drives to see a vehicle from partway around the world. From London to Turkey was my drive, not just like, 11 countries. So, and then the other thing I took on at the same time was the desire to learn off-road racing. And I was very fortunate. I was hooked up with a man named Rod Hall, and Rod was the winningest racer of the Baja 1000. And in 1996, I joined him and trained with him actually at his proving grounds near Reno, Nevada. And I learned the art or skill of off-road racing. And those are two very different things. And we saw at the Texas Truck Rodeo, we saw both ends of the spectrum in that we saw the new Ram TRX, which is a high-speed off-roader. And we also saw the Jeep vehicles. I think we had the greatest number of vehicles fell into the Jeep category, and everything in between.
And a little bitty Subaru Crosstrek.
Correct. So that was how I began and where I went. I was just highly motivated to see the world. And I'll be honest with you guys, in the beginning and for a very long time, I knew nothing about the mechanics of vehicles. And I didn't care. I just cared that they took me to these amazing places. So that was kind of the start. And now, if we do the math, what are we, 32, almost 33 years later? And I'm still doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, pretty cool.
That's awesome.
That is an awesome story, and kind of parallels what got Matt and I to start Garage Talk. Is, we've been gearheads our whole lives. Anytime we get together, we're talking about the newest, latest car stuff, and we're like, how on earth do we get to experience all the vehicles that we want to experience with the budget constraints, because we can't afford to buy a new vehicle every week. And so being that you've got a travel background and that was your desire, that speaks to me as well, and will speak highly to my wife. My wife is in the travel and tourism industry. She is the destination marketer for our city. And she says that she lives in a constant state of travel. And it is her goal to go to all the continents. I don't believe Antarctica is on that list, but it would be quite interesting. I'm not going to lie. She's seen quite a bit of the world and has quite a bit of stories and fun things to tell. But you were telling us before we hit record just about some of the artifacts behind you. You already talked about your Mongolia hat. So I'll get to my question. And what is your favorite destination that you've been to so far?
I use that. Oh, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. I've used it as a security question. I'm not worried about anyone breaking into my account. I have few, and there's not much in them. But that's sometimes I've said home after traveling so much, but also Alaska. And I've been to a lot of exotic places, certainly New Zealand. Australia, I did a 3,000-mile expedition across Australia that was really rigorous last summer. Yeah. And it was recreating the first drive from east to west with 5 deep vehicles across the continent and through the Great Simpson Desert, very extreme. So I've been to South Africa and South Korea and many places, but Alaska, in our own country, to me is so fascinating. And if I could only go one more place, it would be there again. I've spent a lot of time there with four-wheeling. What I love is the diversity, terrain that ranges from the rainforest to some of the driest, up on the tundra, some of the driest climate. I've been to 80 below at Prudhoe Bay on a drive from Anchorage up to Prudhoe Bay in the winter. I've done winter four-wheeling. I love the summer when it's nearly 24 hours of daylight. Although if you're tenting, you've got to figure out a way to get the light. Like, help me, Lord. And, one of the things I'm working on, I've got all the stories for a book. It's a matter of putting it together. But because I've been to so many exotic locations and I've been so blessed to have had such a storied career, I really have been blessed in so many ways. I also like to remind myself and remind others, sort of wherever you go, there you are. But also, we can have exotic journeys so close to home and in our own country. I think it's really important to encourage that concept, especially because we love cars and overlanding has become so popular with such a wide array of vehicles. But in this time of COVID, when it's really difficult to travel outside of the U.S., I really would love to encourage people to get in their vehicle and get into the backcountry and plan a really cool adventure. Big Bend. I love Big Bend. I've been there with the Ford Raptor for a drive. As a shakedown drive before I raced it one time years ago. Nice.
So her resume is making both of us very jealous.
No kidding.
So, yes.
You too can have it if we get out of COVID.
Yes. And that's the goal, is to get there and to be automotive journalists, given our viewers, our listeners, just access to all the vehicles that they never knew they wanted or needed. Which leads me to my next question about the vehicle side of things. So you've seen tons of the world. I know Land Rover has played a big part in your travels and your adventures. But what has been one of your favorite vehicles of all time that you've explored in?
It's a good question. I was also going to say I've done a lot of travel with in Jeep vehicles.
Okay.
And as I said last summer, in an expedition across Australia in five Jeep vehicles. But I put on a couple of Jeep events in Australia for Jeep Jamboree USA, and I've attended many of the Jeep Jamboree USA events to do stories and to see different parts of the country, which is another great way for folks at home to drive their own Jeep or to take a rental, get a rental Jeep and go on an event. But in terms of, I would say my two favorite vehicles are the Ford Raptor and a 1951A Willys Jeep that I bought for $850.
Awesome.
So I was incredibly fortunate. I had completed my first Dakar in the year 2000 in Africa. And it's a long, crazy story about how it evolved to South America with terrorist events that I participated. I was an unwilling participant in, but I developed the goal after being a co-driver, which is called co-pilot, when you're with this company that also puts on Tour de France. So when I was on my first Dakar, I was a co-driver navigator for Darren Skilton, very talented off-road racer. And I had raced with him some other times, both in training and after. And then I wanted to go back as the driver of record. I had this crazy goal to do that. And I went to Ford and I was able to get a pre-production Raptor right as it hit the streets of America. And I took it to a shakedown in Big Bend National Park, drove it 1,000 miles there just to get comfy in the seat. And Darren and I did a little bit of training. We had it roll caged. It was more or less, we were in the open production, stock production class. And if you know about the Dakar, it's the world's longest off-road race, 6,000 miles long. And it was that year from Buenos Aires, Argentina, to the Pacific Ocean in Chile, over sea level to above 16,000 feet, down to sea level and back over and through the Atacama Desert, world's highest desert.
Wow.
And I was the driver of record in the Ford Raptor, and all I dreamed about was finishing, and Darren and I won. We won because no one else finished in our class.
Oh, my goodness.
And so that vehicle that I spent 10,000 miles in on that trip, because we had 4,000 miles of transit, that vehicle is like a family member to me.
Yep.
And I cherish it. I cherish that win. It was just an incredible experience. And then the other vehicle that I mentioned, I was on a Lincoln Blackwood drive years ago in California, in the Monterey area. Okay. And I saw a sign that said Jeep for sale. And I looked in the farm field and I said to my co-driver, spot me for the junkyard dogs, jumped the fence, ran over, looked at it, and Royal Ford, who worked for the Boston Globe, who remains a good friend, a great car guy, Royal came out and looked at it and strongly encouraged me, and I got it home crazily for free. I did a little bit of work on it and drove it a couple of times, And then I owned it for a couple of years, and I just cherished it. I was still getting a free car every week, which I have for 23 years. I've not owned my own car. Yikes. And I heard about a father and son duo. The son was sick, and they wanted to restore something together. And so I sold it for exactly what I had in it, really happily did so. So those two cars, but I have grown fond of vehicles now and know a little bit more. I know when I hear sounds, I'm much more likely to know what's wrong, not always how to fix things. I have a great seat of the pants feel. I probably, when we were in Texas, we had 38 vehicles. I probably drove 22 maybe. And then I went to Detroit to drive vehicles for a jury that I'm part of called the North American Car and Truck of the Year jury. And we had 27 contenders.
Nice.
So I drove another 20 cars. So last week alone, I probably drove 40 some cars. Not typical, but I drive a good 200 cars a year. And so I appreciate many things about them today. And as you know, just in our collection of vehicles that we had at Tawas Truck Rodeo, there's vehicles of every size and price category and
capability
and cameras everywhere and not moon roofs, panoramic roofs. So it's a long-winded answer, but there's just so many vehicles that I treasure.
Yeah. So given how you finished the story of the Raptor, I already know how the answer of this next question is going to go. But you alluded to it earlier, that we had the opportunity to be some of the first in the nation to drive the Ram TRX. And this episode will be published after the embargo is lifted, so we can talk freely without fear of FCA. Without fear of FCA coming.
Am I going to have to leave the room, though? Because I wasn't there, so...
Shh.
Oh, okay.
You are part of the organization, Matt.
Okay, all right.
You are associated with me. So, as I said, I kind of feel I know how this is going to go, but you probably more than pretty much anyone, given your experience with Raptor, are most qualified to answer this question. How does it stack up against the competition?
It's a really good question, and one that's going to be asked a lot.
Yes.
Those two are head to head. And there's no one else in the class.
Not even close.
There isn't. I think I'm not surprised. I think it was really so smart of Ram and FCA or
Stellantis, whatever they're called by this point
right now, to develop the TRX. Some guys that were with it when I went to Detroit said, "Well, what do you think of this?" And I said, "Very smart." It was so. As far as stacking up, there's certainly higher horsepower, as we know, in the TRX, and it's claiming being the fastest vehicle truck in the world. A fair claim.
Right.
And it's being driven right now as we're talking by folks in Lake Tahoe on a ride and drive. So what I think is that each will have Ram used a lot of the same technology that makes the Raptor have a dual personality. It has the legs and suspension to stretch really tall and come down, go over not only uneven terrain, but large bumps and whoops and land gracefully like a gazelle. And what I loved about that vehicle is, and likewise the TRX, although I had very little time to actually really, I want to take it out. I'm going to use this. Maybe I'll have Ram listen to the show.
There you go.
I know some folks I can call and say, I want to take it on a long drive. And Ram has the same technology that allows us to have on-road two-wheel drive, off-road two-wheel drive with a computer setting that would be appropriate, say, for high-speed dirt road, flat dirt road. And then four-wheel drive and four-wheel drive low, and to have the computer do so much of the thinking for us. I used to think that I used to really have a hard time with that. I like to do my own shifting, and I thought that I was. That's right. So there's an 8-speed in the TRX, and there's a 10-speed in the Raptor. But I don't know if this is fair to say. But I said this the other day to the Ram guys that really wanted to know what I thought of it. And one of the things I said was, I think it's great that it's come to the market, and people will start putting the two head to head, and that's cool. And we'll see what happens. But what I've really learned in the car business is there are Ford folks and there are Ram folks. And then as the market expands, it's been really smart with many different car makers to realize that. And that's kind of what I think, that it was a really smart move on the part of Ram to make it. And I haven't done a deep dive into it, but I drove it a little bit fast, but not crazily so on the street. I was in a private area.
Right.
I don't like to speed on roadways. I feel like it's rude, especially when I'm in a manufacturer's vehicle, never mind dangerous.
Right.
But I certainly enjoyed taking it on the track, our little off-road track, which I did twice, and just kept it in auto mode the whole time.
Yeah.
Never used, there's no reason.
Absolutely not. Granted.
Right? What do you think of it?
Well, I talked to the designers of our course, off-road camber, or off-camber designs, and basically what they told everyone before going up that last major obstacle was, it's got the power. You don't need to do anything. You could pull up to it at a dead stop and climb the hill, no problem.
Yeah.
And that course was their off-road 101. So there was nothing there that even posed remote challenges to the TRX. To your point, yes, I am looking forward to actually stretching its legs and seeing what it can do, because what little time you and I got in it at the rodeo pales in comparison to what the first consumers and journalists will do when all bets are off. And so it will be an interesting war that Ram has officially started by coming back at Ford, which leaves me scratching my head. I'm a Chevy guy through and through. What on earth is General Motors doing right now? Where are they?
Hummer. I rate Hummers. Electric Hummer, which I can't wait to see, but that's next week.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that'll be out by the time this comes out as well. So, yeah.
Right. But I do want to say, if I can add a quick bullet point there. When I started in the mid-90s to expand my horizons, and I said, this is crazy. I quit my day job, and there were folks that thought that was crazy, but I'm going to do this. As I told you guys, there were two ends of the spectrum. There was off-road racing, and then there were extreme expeditions, which was more rigorous, low-speed crawl. But then came the Raptor, and you had a vehicle that could do both. Hence, and we have the King of the Hammers event, which we had none of that. And now we have another vehicle that truly is split personality and can do both. So I think one of the real test beds will be at this year's King of the Hammers, which I hope happens in February, because it's a great test of extreme high speed off-road and extreme low speed obstacle crawling.
Yeah.
So,
and before we get off of it altogether, both of those vehicles have actually bridged the gap into a third area, and they're both daily drivers.
Yeah.
They're incredibly comfortable on road, and you can load the family up and hit the dunes and take them to school all in the same vehicle without doing anything. And
you're right.
So it's been really awesome. The last question I've got for you before we go into our final segment, which Matt is very proud of because it is his brainchild. But before we get into that, I just wanted to pick your brain just a little bit about being a female in a male, I don't want to say male-centric, but male-dominated industry. What insight can you give to the up-and-comers that may be hitting roadblocks because of who they are?
I have the best answer. I know it's not the same for everyone.
Right.
In the 33 years I've been in the industry, when I started, there were so few women sort of on the street test driving vehicles in off-road racing. Certainly some in engineering, art, and automotive journalism. Today, there are so many women in every end of the industry, and women are either purchasing or influencing more than 60%, 70% of all vehicle sales. So we have all that. But what's it really like on the street? I have been treated so royally by men in this industry. And it's funny because I've had folks poke at that. Like, for instance, there was a story on me and Bailey Campbell, a young off-road racer. She's at the other end of the spectrum. And when I said, the person who interviewed me, I said, men put me on their shoulders and carried me forward from Four Wheeler magazine and almost everywhere I went. If I was interested, they would tell me or they would encourage me.
That's awesome.
And all that catapulted me into being in a Hall of Fame that many, I don't know, many of the men that I worked with at Four Wheeler and some other places in the beginning, there are just too many in the industry with such broad avenue to go get into the Hall of Fame. I was just very fortunate, and a woman, and I was doing a lot I was on the board of directors of Tread Lightly, Land Ethics organization. And as a journalist, I'd written a couple of small books on my races. And so I wasn't put in because I was a woman, and there are very few women in the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. But and my two big mentors, Rod Hall and Mark Smith from Jeep Jamboree USA, were two of the organizers of that. But men have been so good to me. And what I've said to women, it doesn't mean that there's never been a comment or a moment, but I've had 3 careers, and automotive journalism has had the least ever of anything sort of sexist or gender related. And I'm so proud to be able to say it. It's one of the reasons I love the field.
Yeah.
It's because I feel like it's such a collegial group. We love cars. We love, whether it's the mechanics of them or vintage vehicles or racing them. There's a camaraderie in our field. And, but one thing I do say to women, don't just go sit at a table with other women now that there's a bunch of women on the road. Go hang with the guys that find out who the experts are. Drive with them, ask them questions, become their friends, and act, if you're interested, act interested, and you'll get help. I can pretty much guarantee you. So I've got a pretty positive slant on it.
That's awesome.
Yay, humanity.
Yeah.
Go us.
Yeah, right.
So, yes, thank you. I know when you were introduced at the truck rodeo and your credentials were read out, and then you and I hit off immediately. You saw all the deer in headlights. Like, it was my first truck rodeo, and you offered all the help, and I truly appreciate that. You went on my first ride with me on the off-road course.
Brave.
And
and you were good.
Yes, well, thank you. I truly appreciate your time here this evening. I appreciate all that you've done for TAWA and the Texas Auto Writers Association, for the truck rodeo, and for the industry. You've been influential. Everything you've earned, you deserve, and it's been great sharing some time with you this evening. Matt, do you want to preview our final segment?
Yeah, we can do that. So we started a new segment with those that we interview. Well, it's been several episodes ago now, called Random Misfire, and it's the dreaded PO300 code check engine light that comes up. Right? You never know what it will be, but it's 8 random questions from a list that Corey and I have kind of compiled over the while. Some of them are just yes and no questions. Some of them are either or questions. Some of them are favorites and things like that. But just a quick little fun little way to end the conversation. So, Corey, you want to kick us off with the first question, and we'll just kind of go back and forth with it.
I will be glad to. So, you can get none of these wrong. They are all personal opinion, experience, preference. Except for the first one. I maintain you can get this one wrong. Do you name your vehicles? It's been a while since you've owned one yourself, but
yes, the Blue Goose Chevy. Yes,
nice.
Yes.
I love naming my vehicles, and awesome. I haven't owned one, and I can't wait to get another one and name it.
Yay! You got it right. Woohoo! For the record.
Okay.
All right, built versus bought. Would you rather build a vehicle exactly the way you want it over, several years, or just walk out and buy one? I mean, you're in new vehicles all the time anyway.
That's a really good question, because I miss having my own vehicle. I get a new vehicle every week. I have not owned a vehicle in 24 years, and I miss not having my things in it and personalizing it. And at this stage of my life, I've been too busy traveling to have the time to build something. But now that I've seen so many things built, I would definitely do some add-ons, and it would definitely have 4-wheel drive.
Awesome.
The aftermarket has gotten insane.
Yes, they have.
As of late, and everything. Yeah, everything Ford is bringing to the table for the Bronco. I think they said over 200 factory accessories straight from get-go. All right, so this one is a softball. You've already answered it, but just want to get it again on the record. Manual or automatic?
Well, it was always manual. And by the way, I had a small on-off-road motorcycle when I was a teenager for a little period of time, and so I love shifting and the sound of shifting. But I think I've grown a little, lazy, and I'm getting, lazy and maybe getting a little old. But what I want is both. I want an automatic transmission that I can shift and that those shifts are authentic. So I love paddles when I'm racing at a track or in the dirt. Paddles are so exciting to me, but I also love the fact that sometimes it's really fun to reach down and actually grab a gear shift and pull it into a manual gate.
Yep.
I like it all.
Awesome. All right, you mentioned having dirt bikes previously. 2 wheels or 4 wheels? What's your preference?
Oh, Lord. 4 wheels because it's safer. I loved biking. And I was going to take it up again 5 years ago. I hit a rough patch in my life and I needed to do something different. I said, no more for me on my bucket list. I've done it all. And I hit this patch where I needed to do something different. And I thought, I'm going to go get my motorcycle license again. And then I realized that for me at this age and stage, and people will say, what? You're talking about ageism yourself, that it probably was dangerous. So I went out and got my pilot's license.
Nice.
There you go.
In Texas is where I finished.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You could always run the Dakar on a 2-wheeler since you've covered it on 4 wheels.
I might be going back to the Dakar this January in Saudi Arabia, so we'll have to talk about that another time.
Okay.
I just got asked a couple of weeks ago, and there could be a possibility of a vintage vehicle or a UTV. I will be the team manager. I've made it clear that that's the role I want. But yeah, that's funny. It's funny. Yeah, UTVs I love.
Yeah.
All right, Jeep Wrangler or Ford Bronco?
Wow.
It's kind of an unfair question because we haven't you haven't got to sit in the Bronco yet.
Or has she?
I have.
Oh.
I have driven it. I have. As a matter of fact, I had the Outer Banks Bronco concept vehicle for a week here, or actually 4 days in New England for a photo shoot that I had for Texas Magazine recently. And then I got to drive it a little bit. Right now, I'm going to say Bronco. I love the Wranglers. I like, and I like the Rubicon Wrangler, and I like the Gladiator. But what I like about the Bronco is its footprint, its size. It feels more SUV-like, although it's got a lot of sort of Jeep quirkiness. But yeah, I think right now I would choose, although the last vehicle I owned was, in addition to the 51A Willys, was a V6 Cherokee. So
Awesome. Okay. You mentioned technology earlier in the involvement or lack thereof at times. Do you prefer more tech or less tech?
Wow, that's a great question. Not long ago, I probably would have said less tech. But the tech that I like to have on board is the life-saving tech, like heads-up display and navigation systems. And I tend to crazily just drive and not have a lot of audio and other stuff going on, which many people do. I think the technology that is life-saving for us is really important to me, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't buy a vintage vehicle again, too.
Cool.
All right, so this is my last question. You've put a lot of miles on a lot of vehicles. Favorite road trip snack?
Whoa. Beef jerky.
All right.
That's a good one.
Any particular brand or flavor?
I've made my own, and the reason I say beef jerky is that I've had it in the frigid north. I've had it in the wilds of Central America and the rainforest, because we had to bring our own food on this expedition, and it holds up well. And so I've made it. I like it when it's healthy and good. And then I'm just a sucker for those, the grocery store or the gas station little fire sticks and jerky things.
The trash
All of
jerky.
it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Last question. Favorite car movie?
Favorite car movie? Boy, that's really easy. I worked for 3 years on a movie that is a documentary. It just left the Breckenridge Film Festival. I was a production assistant. It's called One More Win. It chronicles the life and times of the legendary Rod Hall, who raced his 50th Baja 1000 on his 80th birthday.
Wow.
And he was in a wheelchair coming to the end of his life with a Parkinsonian illness. And I'm going to help you guys see it. And it will be going to the Red Rock Film Festival soon. It is made for TV. I'm sorry, not it might go to Netflix and Amazon. It's made for big screen.
Right.
And it some of our shooters were top tier shooters from England and from the U.S. And so it's my favorite movie. I have there's a couple of shots of me racing with Rod.
Nice.
And I love the herding the cats when I was in charge of the film guys. But really, my favorite part of the movie was watching Rod get in at the start from his wheelchair into the Hummer. And he only was in for about 50 miles. And then 50 miles before the finish, he got back in and drove over or was in it over the finish. And it'll make you cry.
Yeah.
It'll make you cry that a man at 80 he wanted to finish his life with one more win. And in fact, he did.
Wow.
That team won. So.
Wow. That's awesome.
All right. Well, Sue, we cannot say thank you enough. Like I said, thank you for your time and energy at Texas Auto Riders and the Truck Radio. Thank you for your time and just sitting down and talking life and cars with us this evening. For our audience, where can they find you now and what you're into and what you're working on?
I'm still a full-time automotive journalist, and despite COVID, I'm slowly back on the road. Unfortunately, living in Massachusetts means I have to quarantine and get tested. I got tested again this week, and I'm negative. But I'm on Facebook. I write for I've written for hundreds of magazines and newspapers and the Houston Chronicle and Focus Daily News in Dallas. I'm a big Texas girl. But today, automotivemap.com, which is out of Houston,
Yes, they are.
4 hours south of you guys. There are a number of other publications. I'm doing a little bit of work for Bronco Nation, writing about for newbie Broncos owners, things like where to go four-wheeling, and which is for everybody, and how to pack your vehicle when you go. Tread magazine. So those are three. I did some work this year for Outdoor by Four magazine, Frank Ledwell, one of our Texas Auto Rider guys. And this year I wrote for Auto Week, and I do a few radio shows here and there. And you guys are so much fun. I wasn't looking for any more radio to do, but you are so much fun from time to time. If you have a fun topic or you want me to come back in with something fun new, I'd love to join you.
So
you are smiling the whole time. You love cars.
Yes, we do.
Oh, yeah.
It's in our DNA, and we just thank you. We will definitely take you up on that offer and stay in contact.
And thank you for the encouragement too, knowing where you came from and how hard you pushed to be where you're at now is an incredible encouragement to me. I'm sure it is to Corey also. That there is hope for those of us who are still on the up and coming side of things. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, guys. A lot of fun. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you so much, Sue.
All right. Bye-bye.
We cannot thank Sue enough for coming on and joining us. I can't thank her enough for helping me get through my first lap of the off-road course at the Texas Truck Rodeo. But before we sign off, we would be remiss if we did not speak about what is happening for those of you listening on the first day this is available. What is happening tomorrow?
Tomorrow. We're a little over a week out,
Right.
and I'm scared how much we still have to do.
There are a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross, but
Definitely.
I just want to give a shout out to the fact that we have some amazing sponsors helping us put this car show on.
Yes, we do.
First of all, if you're unfamiliar with what we're talking about, it's Garage Talk's Unlikely Heroes car show, a car show unlike any other.
What do you mean by that, Corey?
Well, first and foremost, I got the name wrong. It's new to me. It's Garage Talk's Unlikely Heroes car show presented by Carology Detailing.
There we go.
At Hilltop Church of the Nazarene. So there are a lot of details yet to be worked out, but like I said, we've got some great sponsors helping us put this show on, like eGuide Magazine, ETX Laser, ETX Marketing, Texana Olive Oil, Piney Wood Pets, and the aforementioned Carology Detailing. And just go over to gtgaragetalk.com. You'll find out everything you need to know about our car show and about the sponsors helping us put this on.
And if there's still a spot available,
sign up.
Sign up.
Hopefully,
be a part.
Yeah, hopefully we're sold out by now. But you can find links to all of our social media, everything that we're into, things that we've been driving, just all the car news that you can imagine or think of. We are looking to give it to you. It's gtgaragetalk.com. But until next time, bye.